So today I read a blog post on Tumblr, and the Tumblr page is called Shouting into the Void. And the author writes about his feelings about the Big Bang Theory because he's very torn about it, I guess. He makes some really good points about it and why it's not very friendly or funny to nerds. But I'm still on the fence about the show, so let's talk about that. Basically, the author points out that the audience is supposed to identify with Penny and be confused by the four nerds. We're not supposed to dislike the nerds as you traditionally do in TV, but we're not supposed to identify with them, even though they're the protagonists. Penny is normal. They are not. At one point, the author points out that for a few seasons, the only major female character was Penny, and she was blonde, hot, and stupid. Penny does a lot of traditionally cool or normal things in the show. She drinks a lot, she sleeps around with a lot of guys, she has zero interest in learning anything about science or nerd culture. At one point she actually tries to learn a little bit of science, but she's a horrible student, playing into the whole theme that she is stupid and that normal people don't like school. Normal people like parties. Enter Amy Fairfowler, who is really, really smart, if not quite as nerdy as the rest of the guys. But she is also completely socially awkward. So here we have the introduction of a new female character who's within the nerd culture, but plays into the theme that nerds are socially awkward, by definition. The jokes that are made about Amy usually center around her expressions of any kind of sexuality at all. Like, she's not supposed to have those feelings or something. Nerd girls don't have sex. Nerd girls don't want sex. Nerd girls don't want to feel pretty or anything like that. Only normal people, like Penny, get to have sex and everything. Actually, when she was introduced into the show, she was introduced as being basically asexual, just like Sheldon, which is why she was such a good match for him. Like, Amy's not supposed to have those kind of feelings, but it's okay for Penny to talk about sex? I don't understand that. It's a running joke, and it's not new, that nerds don't have sex, or at least don't have good sex, and that's carried over into the show very blatantly. But that's still ridiculous. I don't know where that ever came from, and I'm just going to vouch right here that that is bullshit. Then the author goes on to talk about why perhaps the writers of the show have positioned us this way and have portrayed the nerds as they do. He says, "This is done, in my opinion, to stop them from seeming intimidating. It's essentially Chuck Lorre saying, don't worry, these guys may have fancy degrees, they may be more successful and more intelligent than you, but they like sci-fi and read comic books. They're socially awkward and can't speak to girls. You're much cooler than they are, so you're still better than them." And I think that's kind of a valid point. Quote-unquote normal people who identify with Penny don't want to be in Penny's shoes in the episodes where she feels bad about herself in comparison with the other guys. For a while, she does kind of suffer from some lack of self-confidence because she's not very smart, but she kind of, lets that go pretty quick. So here we have it again with the idea that being cool is better. And that if you do weird things, quote-unquote weird things, if you like comic books, if you get really, really excited about a movie that's kind of nerdy or whatever, then you are somehow less than somebody who's more socially adept. And that's weird. In conclusion, I don't really know how I feel about this show. On one hand, I can see all the ways that it is kind of offensive to nerds, to women, and to homosexuals. We didn't even talk about that one. That's a whole conversation on its own. And yet I still laugh. And I don't really understand why.